August 2nd, 216 BCE. Somewhere between 50,000 and 70,000 men are about to die in a single afternoon. Not over weeks of siege, not across a sprawling campaign. One afternoon. To put that in perspective, that's more than the first day of the Somme, more than Gettysburg, the bloodiest battle in American history, in its entirety. And it happened with swords, spears, and bare hands. Rome had assembled the largest army it had ever fielded, 80,000 soldiers, maybe more. The greatest military machine the ancient world had ever seen, built specifically to crush one man and his ragged army of mercenaries. By sunset, that army would essentially cease to exist. What Hannibal Barca did at Cannae wasn't just a victory. It wasn't even just a massacre. It was something closer to a mechanism, a trap so perfectly engineered that the Romans couldn't retreat, couldn't regroup, couldn't even swing their weapons by the end. Men suffocated standing up. The wounded were crushed under piles of the dying. Ancient sources describe soldiers so tightly packed they were killed not by enemy blades, but by the sheer pressure of bodies. For 2,000 years, military strategists have studied this battle. They've called it the perfect tactical victory. But here's what I want to understand. How do you turn an open field into an inescapable killing box? How do you make 50,000 men walk willingly into their own grave? This is the story of the most inhumane trap in ancient warfare. The setup. Rome's desperation to understand why Rome walked into this trap. You need to understand how badly they'd already been beaten. 2 years. That's how long Hannibal had been in Italy. 2 years of humiliation. First came Trebia. Hannibal lured the Romans across a freezing river at dawn, then sprung a hidden force from behind. Thousands dead. Then came Lake Trasimene, an entire Roman army annihilated in fog. 15,000 men, gone in 3 hours. The consul himself killed. Rome was terrified. Rome was furious, and Rome was done being cautious. The Senate made a decision. No more defensive strategies, no more waiting. They would raise the largest army in Roman history, march it south, and end Hannibal Barca once and for all. Stay with me. Because this decision, this desperate, emotional, politically driven decision, is exactly what Hannibal was counting on, the massive army. Rome didn't just raise an army, they raised a statement, 80,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry. Both consuls in the field, Gaius Terentius Varro and Lucius Aemilius Paulus, commanding on alternating days. This was unprecedented. This was Rome throwing everything it had at a single problem. The math seemed simple. Hannibal had maybe 50,000 men. Outnumber him, overwhelm him, crush him under the weight of Roman steel. But here's what Rome didn't understand. Hannibal wasn't planning to fight their army. He was planning to use it against itself. The terrain trap. Cannae. A flat, open plain near the Aufidus River in southern Italy. August heat. Dust thick enough to choke on. And one critical resource. Water. Hannibal arrived first. He positioned his army with the river at his back, controlling access to the only reliable water source. The Romans, with their massive force, faced an immediate problem. 80,000 men drink a lot of water. They needed this battle to be quick. They needed it to be decisive. A prolonged standoff would destroy them through thirst alone. Hannibal knew this. Here's where it gets strange. Most commanders would see a numerically superior enemy and think, how do I survive this? Hannibal looked at that Roman horde and thought, how do I make their size kill them? He had a plan, and it required the Romans to do exactly what they wanted to do. Attack, the mechanism, the deployment's dawn. August 2nd. Both armies form up. Watch the Roman formation. It tells you everything about their thinking. They've packed their infantry, unusually deep. Normally, Roman legions fight in flexible lines, able to rotate fresh troops forward. Today, they've abandoned flexibility for mass. The plan is simple. Concentrate everything in the center, punch straight through Hannibal's line, split his army in two. It's logical, it's aggressive, it's exactly what Hannibal expected. Now watch his formation. This is the trap. In the center, Gallic and Spanish infantry, but they're not in a straight line. They're pushed forward, bulging outward toward the Romans like a bow. On the flanks, held back and angled, African heavy infantry, his best troops, his freshest troops. They're not engaging yet. They're waiting. And on the wings, cavalry. Numidian riders on one side, Spanish and Gallic heavy horse on the other. Superior in numbers, superior in skill. Think about that formation. The center bulges forward, the flanks hang back. The cavalry waits on the edges. It's not a battle line, it's a mouth waiting to close. Phase 1. The logical thing. The Roman infantry charges. They hit Hannibal's center like a battering ram. 80,000 men compressed into a massive fist of iron and flesh, slamming into that forward bulge of Gauls and Spaniards. And the center gives. The Carthaginian line bends backward. Step by step, yard by yard, the Romans push deeper. The bulge that pointed toward them begins to flatten. Then it begins to invert. From the Roman perspective, this is victory. They're winning. They're pushing Hannibal back. The enemy center is collapsing. But watch what's actually happening. As the Romans push forward, their formation narrows. The men on the edges, eager to join the slaughter, press inward toward the center. The neat rectangular formation starts to become a wedge, then a blob, then a compressed mass of bodies all pushing toward the same point. They're not breaking through. They're funneling in. Phase 2. The cavalry clock. While the infantry grinds forward, the real battle is happening on the flanks. Roman cavalry was never Rome's strength. Today, outnumbered and outclassed, they don't stand a chance. On the left flank, Carthaginian heavy cavalry smashes through the Roman horsemen in minutes. On the right, the Numidians pin down the remaining Roman cavalry, keeping them occupied, useless. The Roman flanks are now naked. But here's the critical moment. The moment that turns a victory into annihilation. The Carthaginian cavalry doesn't pursue the fleeing Roman horsemen. That's what cavalry usually does. Chase down broken enemies, claim easy kills, loot the dead. Not today. Today, they wheel around. They swing behind the Roman infantry, behind 80,000 men who are still pushing forward, still winning, still completely unaware that the door behind them just slammed shut. Watch what happens next. Phase 3. The door slam. The Romans are still pushing forward, still grinding into Hannibal's center, still believing their moments from victory. Then the African infantry moves. Remember those elite troops held back on the flanks? The ones who haven't fought yet? They've been watching, waiting, fresh while everyone else bleeds. Now they pivot, not forward, inward. From both sides simultaneously, Hannibal's best soldiers turn 90 degrees and crash into the Roman flanks. Exhausted legionaries who've been fighting for an hour suddenly face fresh enemies attacking from a direction they never expected. And behind them, the cavalry completes the ring. Picture it. You're a Roman soldier somewhere in the middle of that mass. You've been pushing forward, fighting, sweating, killing. You can't see what's happening on the flanks. You can't see what's happening behind you. All you know is forward. Push forward, kill the enemy in front of you. Then the screaming starts from the sides. Then from behind. You try to turn. There's no room. You try to back up. There's nowhere to go. The men behind you are being killed. The men beside you are being killed. The mass of bodies that was your strength is now your coffin. The encirclement is complete. Front, sides, rear. There is no way out. The geometry of annihilation. Here's where it gets inhuman. In a normal battle, when an army realizes it's losing, it breaks. Men run. Most survive. Casualties come from the pursuit, not the fighting. A defeated army might lose 20%, maybe 30%, rarely more. Cannae wasn't a normal battle. The Romans couldn't run. There was nowhere to run to. The Carthaginian ring wasn't just surrounding them, it was compressing, squeezing inward. Every minute, the space inside got smaller. Every minute, the Romans packed tighter. Think about what that means. A man needs room to fight, room to swing a sword, room to raise a shield, room to step, dodge, breathe. Now take that room away. The outer rings of Romans died first, cut down by African infantry, by cavalry, by Hannibal's men working methodically around the edges. The survivors didn't scatter. They couldn't. They were pushed inward, into the mass, compressed tighter and tighter. Men couldn't raise their weapons, couldn't turn to face threats, couldn't do anything except stand there while the ring tightened. This is the mechanism. This is what Hannibal built. Space itself became a weapon. The killing floor. The massacre. Stay with me, because what happens next is difficult to describe. The killing went on for hours. Ancient sources paint a picture that sounds almost impossible. Polybius describes men killed where they stood, unable to move, unable to fight, simply cut down in place. Livy describes bodies piled in layers, the wounded crushed beneath the dying, men suffocating under the weight of corpses. Some Romans tried to dig. Literally dig. They buried their faces in the earth, trying to suffocate themselves rather than wait for the blades. Others went mad. The heat, the dust, the screaming, the sheer incomprehensible horror of being trapped in a shrinking box of death. Men killed each other in the confusion. Men killed themselves. And around the edges, Hannibal's soldiers worked. There's no other word for it. They worked, methodically, efficiently, like farmers harvesting wheat. The ring squeezed tighter. The blades rose and fell. The pile of bodies grew. By afternoon, the Romans in the center weren't really fighting anymore. They were just waiting. Waiting for the ring to reach them. Waiting for their turn to die. Put yourself on that field for one moment. Not as a general, not as a strategist. As a 17-year-old Roman soldier who marched south to save his city. You woke up this morning believing you'd win. Your army was bigger. Your cause was just. You were Roman. Now you're standing in a mass of corpses, unable to move, watching the killing edge creep closer. You can hear it, the screaming, the wet sounds, the methodical footsteps of men working their way toward you. You can't run. You can't fight. You can't even fall down. The body's around. You hold you upright. All you can do is wait. That was Cannae. The numbers. 50,000 dead. Maybe 70,000. The ancient sources disagree, but the scale is beyond dispute. One afternoon, swords and spears, 50,000 men. The Roman leadership was gutted. 80 senators died on that field, nearly a third of the Roman Senate. 2 quaestors, 29 military tribunes. The consul Paulus, dead. The consul from the previous year, dead. An entire generation of Roman nobility, erased. Hannibal's losses? Perhaps 6,000. Maybe less. Think about that ratio. For every Carthaginian who fell, 8 Romans died. Maybe 10. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution, and it was engineered. Every piece of it. The terrain selection, the formation, the cavalry timing, the infantry pivot, the compression. Hannibal didn't just defeat the Romans. He built a machine that used their own strength to destroy them. The most inhumane trap in ancient warfare. The aftermath. The shock wave. The news reached Rome in waves. First, rumors, then refugees, then the terrible, undeniable truth. The largest army Rome had ever assembled was gone. Not defeated. gone. The men weren't coming home. There would be no regrouping, no second chance. The army had simply ceased to exist. Livy describes the scene in Rome, women wailing in the streets, temples overflowing with desperate prayers, the Senate meeting in emergency session, while the city teetered on the edge of collapse. Every family had lost someone. Fathers, sons, brothers, husbands. The grief was total, and somewhere in southern Italy, Hannibal Barca waited for the surrender that logic demanded. It never came. The impossible response. Here's where Rome proved it was something more than an army. Any other nation would have surrendered. Any rational calculation said surrender. You've just lost 80,000 men. Your leadership is decimated. Your enemy is invincible in the field. You sue for peace. You accept terms. You survive? Rome refused. No negotiations, no embassy, no terms. When Hannibal sent representatives to discuss peace, Rome wouldn't even receive them. The Senate passed a decree forbidding anyone to speak the word peace. Women were banned from public mourning. There was no time for grief. Instead, Rome did something extraordinary. They raised new legions. They armed slaves. They melted down temple treasures for weapons. They drafted boys and old men. And they changed their strategy entirely. The Fabian return. No more pitched battles. No more grand confrontations. No more giving Hannibal what he wanted. Rome embraced the strategy they'd abandoned in frustration. The cautious, grinding approach of Fabius Maximus. Shadow Hannibal's army, harass his foraging parties, burn crops before he can seize them. Never, ever engage in open battle. It was humiliating. It was slow. It was the opposite of everything Roman pride demanded. It worked. Hannibal wandered Italy for 13 more years. 13 years. He won skirmish after skirmish. He never lost a major battle, and it didn't matter. Because you can't conquer a nation that refuses to admit defeat. You can't force surrender from an enemy that won't negotiate. You can't take a fortified city with an army built for field battles. Hannibal had built the perfect trap at Cannae. He'd engineered the most complete tactical victory in ancient history, and Rome simply outlasted him. The paradox. Think about that. 50,000 Romans dead in a single afternoon. The most inhumane trap in ancient warfare. A victory so perfect that military academies still teach it 2,000 years later. And it wasn't enough. Hannibal understood something profound about battle. That an enemy's strength can be turned against them, that aggression can become a cage, that the battlefield itself can be engineered into a killing machine. But Rome understood something Hannibal didn't. You can destroy an army without destroying a nation. You can win every battle and still lose the war. Tactical genius means nothing against an enemy with infinite willpower and inexhaustible resources. Cannae was the most perfect tactical victory in ancient history. It also didn't win the war. There's a lesson in that. The legacy. 2,000 years later, generals still chase Hannibal's ghost. The German Schlieffen Plan, the blueprint for World War I, was explicitly modeled on Cannae. Swing around the flanks, encircle the enemy, achieve the double envelopment that Hannibal perfected on that August afternoon. It failed. Military strategists study Cannae like scripture. They diagram the formations. They analyze the timing. They search for the formula that turns a battlefield into a killing box. Most of them miss the point. Cannae wasn't just about formations. It wasn't just about cavalry timing or infantry pivots. It was about understanding your enemy so completely that you could predict their decisions before they made them. Hannibal knew Rome would mass their infantry in the center. He knew they'd push forward when his line gave ground. He knew their aggression would blind them to the trap closing around them. He didn't defeat the Roman army. He made the Roman army defeat itself. The trap perfected. So how do you turn an open field into an inescapable killing box? You choose terrain that forces your enemy to attack quickly. You position a center that bends but doesn't break. You hold your best troops back until the moment of maximum impact. You win the flanks while the center bleeds. You seal the rear before the enemy knows they're trapped. And then you compress. You squeeze 80,000 men into a space that fits 20,000. You take away their ability to fight. You take away their ability to run. You take away their ability to do anything except die. That's the mechanism. That's Cannae. What remains? The battlefield is empty now. A quiet field in southern Italy. Olive groves. Summer. Wheat. The Aufidus River still flows nearby, though its course has shifted over millennia. Tourists occasionally visit. There's a small museum. Some interpretive signs. Nothing that captures what happened there. But beneath that soil, somewhere beneath the farms and the roads and the accumulated centuries, lie the bones. Tens of thousands of them. Roman boys who marched south to save their city. Gallic warriors who'd crossed the Alps for Carthaginian gold. Spanish mercenaries. Numidian horsemen. African infantry. All of them trapped together in the same ground. Victors and vanquished. The killers and the killed. August 2nd, 216 BCE. The sun rose over a flat plain near the Aufidus River. By noon, the trap was closing. By afternoon, the screaming had faded to silence. 50,000 men walked onto that field in the morning. By sunset, they were part of it. Somewhere in southern Italy, the summer wheat grows tall. The farmers who work those fields sometimes find things. A corroded blade, a fragment of bronze, a shape that might once have been a helmet. They don't think much of it. 2,000 years is a long time. The earth swallows everything eventually. But on certain August afternoons, when the heat shimmers off the plain and the dust rises in the still air, you can almost feel it. The weight of 50,000 ghosts still waiting for a retreat that never came. The most inhumane trap in ancient warfare. The field remembers.